Benedict College professor and nationally recognized journalist Tom Hoops joins us now to talk about his book, What Pope Francis Really Said. Thanks for being with us, Tom.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Let's get right into it. It seems like Pope Francis is encouraging us to be confident, caring, and charismatic Catholics. Do you find that's been your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. This is sort of the Francis option, as I call it in the book. You may have heard of the Benedict option, where people are kind of tactically retreating a little bit from the world in order to rediscover their faith, and I love the Benedict option. The Francis option tells you, well, let's stop the retreat and get out into the streets. Let's get out of those pews, as you put it, and start bringing the light of Christ to people everywhere around us. He has interesting advice in his first document on the joy of evangelization, where he says, the church can't be at a baseball game. The church can't be in your workplace. The church can't be anywhere but in the church. And you can be in all of those places, and you're supposed to bring Jesus Christ into those places.
Tom, thanks so much for writing this book, and because, as you indicate, Pope Francis has a great option for us, and you open up our eyes to discover more about that option. In the book, you actually share the differences between your experience of Pope Francis and also the experience of your daughters. Can you tell us a bit about the similarities and the differences between the two?
Yeah, so people of my generation had a very different experience of the church from people of my daughter's generation. We kind of were defensive about our faith. We felt like it was under attack often. We felt like we had to hold on tight. And it created a sort of, I call it a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder in us. Whenever we hear something new, something that rocks our boat a little bit, it scares us, frankly, and we worry about the faith. My daughter didn't experience that. She grew up in a time when the faith was very professional. She was watching VeggieTales growing up. She was watching videos about saints. She went to vacation Bible schools every summer. She has a very confident understanding of the faith. So when Pope Francis says things that trouble us, the younger generation that I find here at Benedict College and my daughter simply says, oh, that's great. I understand where he's coming from. But my generation thinks, wait a second, are you sure you're saying this the right way?
If you could get into a little bit about the research of the book, what was that like? What was maybe some of the biggest surprises that you found in putting this all together?
Sure, and I'll show the book here.
There it is.
What Pope Francis really said from Servant Books. And I did this research during the last year. Basically, I finished up last spring. And it was a very tough time to be reading Pope Francis and trying to figure out what he was saying. This is a time when he dropped 20 points in Gallup favorability polls, and people had real concerns about what Pope Francis was saying and what is he really getting at and what does he really mean. But what I found over and over again in the research is that we were not hearing the full story. I mean, some of the most famous things that Pope Francis said, he never really said. And many of the things that he did say, we hear in a totally different context. And you often hear just a piece of what he said in the media, or you hear a smidgen of it. But he said he's given the full picture of the faith, and he's given it again and again. And I try to do what in the book, go through 10 different hot button issues. This was my initial assignment. Where does Pope Francis stand on homosexuality, on abortion, on immigration, on environmental issues? I went through 10 of these issues to try to pin down what Pope Francis has said. And what he said is really what our Catholic faith has been saying in the Catechism all along, and really what the Gospels have been saying all along.
Yeah, sometimes, Tom, we can be led astray to think that what Pope Francis is saying is not in sync with the Church's traditional teaching. But as I'm sure you point out in the book, that's not the case. But as we know, and as Pope Francis has pointed out, not every question has a precise black and white answer, and because life is complex. And Pope Francis has often said that sometimes it's important to make a mess. Do you think he's kind of made a mess for the sake of our growth in the faith?
Yeah, he really has. And in that sense, he really isn't doing something different. Well, he is in a way, he isn't in another way, from his predecessors. So his predecessor's big project was make the church start listening to the church again. The world has gotten very good at ignoring the church. but Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict started to reinsert us in the conversation. Well, Pope Francis has done this to a superlative degree. He makes sure that, like us or dislike us, you're talking about the Catholic Church. He's gotten into more conversations, and whenever the church is the subject of conversation, the church ultimately wins.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, we thank you for this conversation with us. Look forward to more people reading your book so they can learn not just about Pope Francis, but also learn more about the great gift of their Catholic faith. Where can people learn more about the book and find it?
The book, you can get it on Amazon for starters,
Great.
Also on Servant Books from Franciscan Media. And it's a great Christmas present. I actually considered buying it for people for Christmas, but then I realized, well, I can get a couple of copies free. So,
there you go. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Tom, and your family, and may God bless you in these final Advent days. And thank you for providing this peek, another look at a great leader, a great shepherd for our church, Pope Francis.
Great, and thank you very much.
All right, God bless.